Okay, we're now recording. So this is the third lecture on Ayurveda and the mind. And I'm going to really try to cover a lot of ground today. This is material that I previously presented in this course in two different sessions, and I'm combining it into one. So we're going to talk about the three gunas and food and the mind. So a lot of the material is related to Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita, as you all probably know, is a very important yoga literature. And chapter 17 of the Bhagavad Gita covers the three gunas and different characteristics of the gunas related to various foods and activities and so forth. And of course, we've already covered Sankhya material. And now we're really trying to bring it down to action. So just to recap some of the concepts that we've talked about. The mind is like a sponge, and it can absorb the qualities of places, people, activities, food we eat, qualities of time. Quality of time is a very, very important concept. And in block 2, we also cover the concept of Jyotish. Jyotish is the Vedic understanding of luminaries, of the various planetary influences that provide subtle energies that color the time. Every time of day changes. It has a different influence. So mind picks up on these things. Mind is influence. It's like an antenna. And mind arises from Ahankara and Sattva Gun. The balanced state of mind is in Sattva Gun. So when you read Ayurveda, Ayurvedic literature, you sometimes find that the Sanskrit word sattva is used to refer to the mind. So sattva means existence, right? Literally, the state of being. So when we're talking about sattva gun, it's the state of balanced existence, of pure existence. That is the implied meaning of sattva gun. But the word sattva means existence. And mind is also called sattva because mind is sort of the center of our existence. Everything, we live through the mind. We feel things in the mind. We experience things. Our desires originate in the mind, and our will to action also. So how is mind related to karma? This is a very, very important concept. Action is called karma. Sometimes, people will say karma, oh yeah, that's bad karma, good karma. Well, karma also means the result of action, but more importantly, karma really refers to action. It refers to action as well as its results. So past actions are recorded in the conscious and subconscious mind. So this perspective, we've gone over this perspective of mind in Ayurveda. We have not just started this life from nothing. We have a past life. We just don't remember, but these impressions have been recorded in the subconscious mind. We have impressions from this life as well that are in our subconscious as well as in our conscious mind. And sometimes impressions lead us to act impulsively. We can't always analyze our reasons for action. So this is a function of conditioning. Actions themselves produce results. The Sanskrit word for results is karma phala. And these results of action seed future action by creating, who can tell me, what are the seeds of future action? So when we say that the seeds of future action are sown by our current action, what are we referring to? Can anyone tell me? What kind of seeds might be planted? Anyone? Well, okay, so the seeds of destiny, you could say that, but really specifically what we're talking about are desires. So the seeds of desire, the thought, even a thought or a fleeting impression, it's like a little seed of some future action. Because what does thinking lead to? Remember, we talked about 3 occupations of the mind. This is one of the core things. This is one of the questions that we would ask, and we will have some assignments this week on material that we've covered. So we talked about 3 occupations of the mind. Can anyone remember what are the 3 occupations of the mind? The first one is, feeling is the second. The first one is thinking, that's right. And what's the third one? Willing, exactly. So thinking, feeling, and willing, these are like the 3 main cylinders that fire constantly in the engine of the mind, and there's this cycle. So willing leads to action, karma. Karma gives results, karma phala. The word fruit is very significant because fruits have seeds, and then the seeds produce little sprouts. The sprouts grow into trees, and they produce more fruits. So karma is like a wheel. It's a cycle. It just keeps itself in motion. It continues. It grows. It produces seeds. The seeds grow into other thoughts, other feelings, other willings. So it's very difficult to stop this cycle. And of course, yoga practice often focuses on ways of stopping this cycle for the goal of freedom, liberation, or moksha, getting out of that cycle. Very, very difficult to stop. So in Ayurveda, the thing that I really would like to get across to you is understanding this perspective on the mind and action, because this is very much related to trying to help someone to rectify an imbalance because of this vritti, this occupation of the mind. So is desire the motivation for material existence? Yes. And this is the focus of Buddhist philosophy, is that it's desire that is the motivation for material existence. But desire itself arises naturally from the Atma. It's just reflected through our sukshma sharira, our subtle body comprised of ahankar or ego, mind, manas, and buddhi or intelligence. So, so the desires are actually originating because it's the nature of the soul to seek pleasure, the nature of the Atma. But it's all reflected through the mind and the intelligence and ego, which are colored by these 3 gunas. And so this leads us into different types of action: good action, bad action, action we sometimes feel we don't have a choice in. So let's talk about these 3 gunas. So we have these 3 gunas. We've all heard about these concepts: sattva, rajas, and tamas. And like primary colors, they can be mixed. So I've tried to make a little diagram to show. Here you've got yellow, red, and blue, and they overlap. And there's this whole palette of colors here. Okay. So there are unlimited combinations of these gunas. And sattva guna can be called the mode of purity and goodness, but it's not good in the sense of good versus evil. It's good in the sense of it's clear. It's relatively clean and clear and light. And tamogun is not. It's not the. It can be called the mode of darkness or ignorance, but it's not evil. It's the source of matter. It's the when ahankar. Remember, here we go. We're going back to Samkhya philosophy. All this abstract philosophical stuff. Now we're literally bringing it down to earth, because tamogun, when ahankara is in contact with tamogun, this is the source of all matter. Our groundedness requires tamogun. We need sleep. We cannot live without sleep. Sleep is tamasic in nature, but it is an essential ingredient. It's essential for the functioning of intellect. It's essential for children to grow. It's essential for us to be healthy, to have good sleep. So these three gunas are present in varying proportions. Okay, so you know the theory of these three gunas. Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Sattva is the mode of goodness or purity, Rajas the mode of passion, activity, and Tamas the mode of ignorance, darkness, substance. So when we have combinations of the three gunas, there may be some that are dominant, and the influence of the three gunas is complex and multi-layered. So it's never just black and white, or all red, all yellow, all blue. There's always some subtlety and some layering and some combination. Sort of like, think about a wall that has, it may be, if you look at an abstract painting that has lots of different paint splattered on it, it may have big splotches of blue and reds and yellows, but at the end of the day, I look at it and say, well, this is mostly kind of greenish looking, but it really had a lot of things going on and a lot of different layers. So this is how the gunas cover our existence. Our existence is complex and multi-layered. So remember, one of the characteristics that we said mind has is that it is complex. It is complex and subtle. There's a lot going on many, many layers. And these layers can all be colored by different combinations of these three gunas. But we will generally, when we're trying to characterize something, we'll try to characterize it according to what's predominant. We might say, okay, so there's some influence of tamogun here, and we know what we can do in terms of trying to counterbalance that predominance of tamogun. So just to recap our terms here, when we're talking about gunas, sattva guna is the mode of purity, goodness, and maintenance. It's the mode of continuation, of keeping, of balance. Rajogun is the mode of passion, activity, creation, moving forward, changing things. It requires Rajogun. It's the mode of intensity. Tamogun is the mode of ignorance, inactivity, destruction, madness. It's imbalance. And these are kind of the things that can happen when tamogun there's an imbalance of tamogun. And we also use the term sattvic when we're talking about things that are of or related to sattvagun. Rajasic simply means of or related to rajogun, and tamasic simply means of or related to tamogun. So those are just some Sanskrit terms that we use very frequently. So it's important for me as to learn Sanskrit is rather challenging, but just learning a few Sanskrit terms is important, and we try to give some equivalency to Sanskrit terms, but it's not 100%. So that's why we sometimes need to go into a little depth to explain a term, and then we'll keep coming back to the Sanskrit term rather than just using an English equivalent. Because we could say sattvagun is the mode of purity, goodness, maintenance, balance, blah, 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 blah. But really, it's all of those. And it's something you need to sort of think on, and we can express it in the term, in one word, sattvagun, but it is all of those things. So, it would be really awkward to say the mode of purity, goodness, maintenance, balance, and clarity. Instead, we're going to say sattvagun. And we ask you to try to think on these things, what they mean, and try to remember these key terms, because these are again things that we will ask you to respond on and explain and understand. So let's also think about action. Now, how is action related to gunas? So there are specific types of action associated with gunas. So violence is going to be predominated by tamogun and rajogun, tamas and rajas. Good deeds are going to be mostly sattvic, mostly in sattvagun, sometimes in rajogun, rajas. So, for example, if someone does a good deed and they're just trying to help others and they're not looking for a reward or for fame or recognition, that's a very sattvic thing to do. If someone wants recognition, if they want some reward, if they want to be recognized, that's more in rajogun. Actions of creation and construction, this is very much associated with the rajas quality, rajogun. Actions of destruction, vandalism, theft, very much tamogun. I think you get the idea here. So the effects of action also have an association of qualities. And again, how do we get back to Ayurveda and the mind? Mind is affected. It's affected by action. It's affected by its effects. Okay, so tell me, how many of you have, let's say you've done something that you later regretted. You later looked back on it and you felt ashamed of what you have done. So would you agree or disagree that your mind was affected just by doing that action? Was it more than just later feeling some regret, or do you feel that it actually had some effect on your mind and maybe changed? Yes. And furthermore, the effect, let's say that we did something that had some consequences. Those consequences come back to us, and they also affect our mind. So this is part of this whole equation of understanding the mind, understanding how mind is affected by action, understanding how mind is affected by these different modes. So how is the mind in balance? So again, let's go back to Sankhya philosophy. Now, according to Sankhya, the mind arises from ahankar or ego in contact with sattvagun, the mode of purity or goodness. This is a very, very important point. So mind comes about through this fundamental principle of ahankar, this glue, which connects us, which connects the Atma, the spiritual being, to this world. When ahankar is in contact with sattvagun. So this means mind is naturally balanced in sattvagun. Mind needs sattvagun. Intellect will naturally lean towards rajogun. Now, I want to explain something about intellect. When we're talking about intellect, we're not talking about logical, mathematical intelligence. We're also talking about the functions of other things that involve intelligence, our discrimination, our ability to tell right from wrong, our ability to, analyze things and understand truth from fiction and be able to know when, someone's telling the truth or not, to be able to create a piece of music or a poem. These are all different forms of intelligence. To create a work of art is a function of intelligence. It is intelligence, but sometimes we use intelligence more in harmony with the mind. Sometimes in technical fields, there's a use of intelligence that's just all numbers and there's not a lot of harmony with the mind. It's very detached. And that's why technical people sometimes suffer from, imbalances and social inability and being socially inept is, part of what causes people to use the term geek. It means someone who's technically proficient but usually socially inept. Influences of rajogun and tamogun, they tend to unbalance the mind. So if there's anything that has a lot of use of intellect sort of uncoupled from mind, it has a very strong tendency to unbalance the mind. If we do things that we enjoy, even if they require a lot of activity and a lot of thought and a lot of intensity, we do not feel stressed by them. So this right here is one really important principle and a very important thing to understand. And it's really one thing. If you come away with one thing out of all this, this is the most important thing. Understand this: that mind has arisen from ahankara in contact with sattva gun, and therefore it is the state of balance that the mind requires to be in a sattvic state to find its balance, to get its harmony. Intellect likes to be busy, likes to do things, likes to create things, and intellect also enjoys doing things with. All right, let's try something here. Okay, so continuing. So this is one important takeaway here, is this principle of the mind in sattva gun is naturally balanced. And that's why sometimes for relaxation, someone may like to do something where the sort of so-called left and right-brained parts of us are able to join together. So like someone might be doing something that's very technical, or a management job, or something that's very stressful, and maybe for relaxation they will go and play a musical instrument, or they will dabble in painting or something like that, or woodworking, or something where you can use both the creative, passionate side and the thinking side together, and have them come together in harmony. Sort of elope and let the mind and intelligence just go off and have fun and do something. We really need that. So let's talk about, we've talked about mind and Gunas, let's talk about food. So what we consume, where we get it, how it's prepared, has an effect on consciousness. Foods that balance our constitution may have a different effect on the mind. So to give one example, for kapha prakriti, for someone whose prakriti is primarily kapha dosha, onions and garlic may be helpful, but they are naturally rajasic, so they tend to increase rajogun. That means that they will have a rajasic effect on the mind. So it may help with the body, but the effect on the mind is going to increase rajogun. So it's going to tend to increase desire. So that's why in some religious circles, people will actually, onions and garlic are prohibited because they increase desire. They will also increase sexual desire. So sometimes in some celibate orders, it's absolutely forbidden. There's no meat, fish, eggs, no onions, no garlic, and no mushrooms also, because mushrooms tend to be a little tamasic. So there are qualities that are associated with various foods. So these is described in chapter 17 of Bhagavad Gita. And they're described according to the inclination of someone who is predominantly in a particular guna based on their previous impressions or sanskars. And they are foods that tend to increase those qualities. So, for example, things that are very pungent, like chilies, red chilies, onions, garlic. These are rajasic foods. Things that are, sweet and juicy. These are more sattvic. Things that are rotten, stale, tasteless, more tamasic. So here are some of these qualities. So sattvic foods, they increase life and enthusiasm. They increase strength and good health. They provide natural happiness and satisfaction. They are tasty. They are substantially nourishing, good for you. They are agreeable to the heart and to the stomach. So some examples of very sattvic foods are, milk, ghee, cream, wheat, sugar, rice, jackfruit, pumpkin. These are all things that are naturally sattvic. Now, one thing that goes along with these things is that, let's say, if someone has a kapha prakriti, primarily kapha, and they indulge a lot in these sattvic foods, well, they're going to tend to be fattening. They can be fattening for everyone, which also means, let's say that someone has a disturbance of someone is very vata, and they are having trouble sleeping at night, and they are very disturbed. There may be the grounding influence of having sattvic food may be very helpful for them. There's such a preoccupation with being thin, which is actually unhealthy. It's unhealthy to be too thin. You can be too thin, and but people have this image of, oh my God, I want to be so thin, and thin is desirable, and this is really an external thing. It's not really natural, and that can create imbalance. So sattvic foods can be helpful. So rajasic food is characterized by excess. Too bitter, too sour, too salty, too hot, too pungent, or dry. Rajasic foods will produce a burning sensation. They may cause pain, and they may give rise to imbalance. So some examples are chilies, horseradish, garlic, onion. If you eat too much onion, it can cause, some gastric disturbance. Some people are more sensitive. For example, I'm very sensitive, especially uncooked onion. It's going to give me, I'm going to have serious bowel problems if I have too much of that. So I generally will try to avoid it, especially if it's uncooked. Chilies, someone indulges too much in chilies, they can end up having a problem with hemorrhoids. It's a fairly common thing. If someone indulges too much in really hot stuff, like, if someone, says, oh yeah, I really love that habanero pepper sauce, and I just, eat it every day, well, you're going to have some irritation, and you may end up with piles as a result. So, rajasic things, they may cause pain, and they can also cause imbalance and disease. So tamasic food, things that are cooked more than 3 hours before being eaten, or leftovers. So this is a very important thing. When we cook things fresh and eat them after they have been cooked fresh, there is no comparison. It's not the same as having something frozen and reheated. There is more pran, there is more life in food. So now one way of looking at pran is think about food as being a bioactive substance. So if you freeze and then microwave and you do all these kinds of unnatural things to food, cooking them at extremely high temperatures because you're in such a big hurry, these things reduce the bioactive properties of food. And another way of saying that is that it reduces the pran. So like they've done studies where they've fed rats only things that have been microwaved, and the rats end up dying because they are not getting their nourishment from that. And then, so the concept of cooking things fresh, not overcooking them, this gives things a tamasic quality. So also foods that are tasteless, things that are stale, overly processed food, that is going to be more tamasic. Things that are rotten, and I mean, I don't want to even give examples, but there are definitely places where people enjoy eating things that are actually putrid and rotten and disgusting. But for them, they think it's tasty, and they may think that things that we would say are very sattvic are horrible. Foods that are unclean or impure, things that are that have hormones, pesticides, chemicals added, that can also have a tamasic effect, or things that someone else has eaten. All right, so let's have a little question here for discussion. So there's a farmer who harvests unripe bananas because they have to go 2 or 3 days by boat to reach the grocery store. They treat them with ethylene gas to ripen them quickly. But bananas are naturally sattvic. Would those be sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic? So to answer Avalon's question, yes. If you keep, it's really best to, it does become tamasic, which means that it doesn't have as much benefit. It's still better to eat your homemade khichdi that's left over the next day than to eat something store-bought. But you think of it like a scale. Your value of what you're getting from it definitely goes down. So it's always best to have fresh, which makes it really tough to but again, you can also supplement your things with because I mean I eat leftovers quite a lot. There's just no time to cook every day or cook 3 times a day. Ideally, that's how you would best nourish yourself, but practically it's just not always possible. So let's talk about this. So are those bananas that are force ripened with ethylene gas, would they be sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic? Bananas are naturally sattvic, but if they're force ripened, if they're treated with ethylene gas, what kind of quality would they have? Yes, so they would definitely have, they would be more tamasic. They would not have their naturally sattvic quality. Not that they would be, harmful, but it's definitely not going to be the same as if they were ripened naturally. So let's give another example. Let's say that you buy ghee from an Indian grocery store and it's close to its expiry date. It was made 2 years ago. Is it sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic? And this is a little bit of a trick question. So what do we think, folks? Anyone else? Anyone else care to give an opinion on that? So actually, Christian has it right. Ghee is, if ghee is prepared properly and stored properly, the people who regulate food are going to have certain regulations on the expiry date. But according to Ayurveda, if ghee is prepared properly and it is kept sealed, and there are certain ways that they will prepare ghee in South India. They'll put it in a clay pot and they have a way of sealing the pot so that it's totally airtight. It actually keeps indefinitely, and its properties will actually increase with age. So ghee is something that it not only remains sattvic, but it actually can have increased benefit. So making ghee properly is actually very important. If you can make ghee and do it right, start with unsalted butter, and keep it in an airtight jar, it will actually keep and it will maintain its sattvic properties. So this is not fit with that general pattern of things that are cooked, because ghee is considered to be a substance rather than a prepared food. Okay, so we talked about the cow's milk ghee, and that we said is still sattvic, even though it's 2 years old, but it was made properly, it's been kept airtight, and it's still kept its sattvic property. But if we made some fresh-made organic ghee from buffalo butter, but it wasn't quite made and purified properly, what kind of qualities is that going to have? So what kind of gunas, what qualities of the gunas is that ghee made from buffalo butter going to have? Okay, Christian says it's going to be rajasic. Anyone else have an opinion on that? Okay, so yes, Avalon has it, and Jennifer has it partly. Buffalo milk has a naturally tamasic quality. Cow's milk is naturally sattvic. Buffalo milk is naturally tamasic. Different milks have different guna qualities. So, for example, someone who is kapha prakriti, cow's milk may not be so beneficial for them. Goat's milk has different properties and will be recommended for someone who is suffering from a kapha imbalance. Buffalo milk it tends to be thicker and creamier than cow's milk. It is considered to have a little bit more of a tamasic quality. Again, tamasic does not necessarily mean bad or evil, but it's what is a natural guna that's associated with something. So this is just sort of to open up open your eyes to look around and look at your reading on Ayurveda, look at these different substances and what are their natural properties. And so this is just kind of opening the door to that topic. So just to recap a little bit, food can be in different gunas. Sattvic food is sweet, nourishing, fresh, and juicy. Rajasic, spicy, sour, overly pungent. Tamasic, stale, rotten, tasteless. The qualities of food affect consciousness. The qualities of the preparer enter food. And food addictions, let's talk about food addictions. Very common. This is a very common problem. So food addictions can cause us to ignore important warnings. Eating just for the taste, eating for comfort, eating as a substitute for life and love, very, very harmful. Eating unconsciously, always harmful. It's always bad to just eat and not be conscious, not be aware. We should be aware of the source, and we should be aware of what it went into preparing. So if we're just eating for the taste, and we're not aware of how food was prepared, and we're not aware of the consciousness with which it's prepared, that's not good. But mind associates sensory input with feelings, so we often will bypass intellect when it comes to food choices. Okay, I like this food, it makes me feel good, but that can be the mind. The mind is experiencing things, and the mind will crave sensations. Remember, we talked about these occupations of the mind: thinking, feeling, willing. So we associate, emotions are heavily associated with eating, with food, with taste, and the feeling in our stomach. We sometimes feel an emptiness in our life, and to fill that emptiness in our lives and our emotions, we want our stomachs to be full. Full stomach is not a good thing. According to yoga practice, the stomach should never be more than half full of food. If the stomach is more than half full, digestion does not take place. So stuffing ourselves is not natural. If we do that more than occasionally, it is going to be inviting trouble, because digestion will not be able to happen properly. But when there's a food addiction, one thing that often happens is someone will they will try to supplant the emotionally empty feeling with the full stomach feeling, to try to achieve fulfillment through a full stomach. Full stomach is unhealthy. So people in yoga practice, they will sometimes try to eat, not have the stomach not more than half full of food, and then to have maybe 1/4 water and 1/4 air. So I mean that may it may be a little extreme for some people, but that's actually a good combination for digesting. So in food preparation, we want to be aware of what we're cooking with, and we want to be aware of our consciousness starting from the time that we're preparing. We want to be aware when we're procuring and shopping and obtaining. We want to be aware of the results of obtaining food. What's the impact? What's the environmental impact? What's the impact on other living beings? Because remember, action affects consciousness. And actions that are done by others involved in things we consume can also affect consciousness, because this is all about this. We don't live in a vacuum, because Ayurveda has so much to do with consciousness. We are part of a larger existence, and consciousness is an element of this whole world. We are a part of a greater whole, and consciousness connects us all. We are connected in subtle but very definite ways. So actions by others that are involved in things we consume can also affect our consciousness. So food and violence. It may be very hard to avoid violence toward other living things. But if there is violence involved in obtaining food, it will also affect our consciousness, even if it's done by others. Facing and acknowledging the violence, what has happened, it may help us become more conscious of what we eat. So, for example, I may be okay going out and cutting vegetables from the garden, but if I was eating, animal-based products, and I had to kill the animals myself or see them being killed, I might opt for more plant-based options. So, think of the extreme example. And this is it's a little bit of a difficult topic sometimes nowadays, because even though people hear about, plant-based diets, and even Oprah talks about it, but then Oprah gets beat up by the, meatpacking industry about, how can you say that, and you're defaming us, and we're going to sue you because you're going to make us lose money because Oprah says it's better to have more of a plant-based diet. But, it's a fact, and it has been shown by research. Having more of a plant-based diet would be good. People in this country, they really eat way too much red meat, and they, really would just automatically benefit so much from more of a plant-based diet. But there's part of the element that I want to underscore here is this involvement in consciousness, because the effect on consciousness has an effect on our health also. And people don't notice it when they get caught up in this whole cycle of doing, and they're just not conscious of what they eat. They're not conscious of their state of mind, and they're not seeking balance. They're just trying to move forward as fast as they can to compete and get ahead of everyone else. But that's not healthy. So, it's definitely something that's worth thinking about and talking with people that you are trying to help as an Ayurvedic practitioner. I'd say it's as our practice, which is really mostly Monica, in trying to help people, it's the biggest single thing. Well, tell me, what do you eat for breakfast? Well, I have bacon and eggs. What do you have for dinner? Well, I eat, red meat. What do you have for lunch? Well, I go out and have a hamburger. We really need to talk about trying to get you on more of a plant-based diet. This is, again and again, we we find, and when we can get people off of that immediately, within a week or two, we see results. We see positive results. We see it's just, I think I'm preaching to the choir here, so I don't really need to go on about that. But let's just talk briefly about the mind in the various gunas. So mind in sattva gun is attracted to peace, beauty, nature, things that promote well-being. Mind in rajagun is attracted to action, conflict, movement, competition, things that promote gain, greed, selfishness. Mind in tamogun is attracted to inactivity, laziness, foolishness, sleep, destructive behavior, insensitive behavior, intoxication, gross consumption, craziness. And the state of mind leads us to action. So remember, we talked about these three functions of the mind, these three occupations, thinking, feeling, and willing. If we want to change our behavior, we need to change the mind. Changing the mind can take time. Very important point. Because our current state is the end product of a long chain of desiring and activity. There's this chain that's been going on, it stretches way back. There's this chain, thinking, feeling, willing, acting, thinking, feeling, willing, acting, and it's been going back not just in this life, but in previous lives as well. And that is what has ended up as our current state. So in Sanskrit literatures, it's said that daiva, or fate, is the product of our past actions as we are given the results for them. So we have actually created our own fate by our own actions in the past. We just don't see or remember those past actions. We see the result in this life, and we call it fate, but it is actually said to be simply the product of our own actions. So rajagun and tamogun, they tend to move us downward, and these are unbalancing factors for the mind. So again, changing the mind, easier said than done. We're not usually aware of what has led to our current situation. Our circumstances, they lead us to incremental changes in our perception. We change our perception a little bit at a time. And our changes in perception, our changes in the way we view the world, our changes in the way we judge our own actions, they are also colored by the three gunas. So those changes in perspective, they also change our tendency for action. And rajagun and tamogun are going to be at the core of all types of mental imbalance. So really, we've kind of run out of time. There was a lot of ground to cover here. I just want to give you a heads up. There are going to be some assignments here, some things I'd like you to do and think about, mostly essay-type questions, and so we'll have details that will be posted there. So just before I end here and get ready, Monica's about to do another class here. Do we have any questions on what we've gone over today? Yes, I actually have just gotten posted the slideshows from the previous 2 weeks, and this one is actually already up there, and I'm just going to put the link to the recording, and then it will be there in the Manasa 101. Okay, well, again, thank you all very much for your participation, and be well, be healthy, be balanced, and namaste.